Hey, what up guys, NT here. This is going to be my Extreme Behemoth deconstruction video, and we are going to start with my set. Alright, so this set actually is just a slight variance of the set I used for the regular Behemoth hunt. Guard 5, Health Boost 3, Handicraft 4, Weakness Exploit 3, Guard Up and Razor Sharp formed the core of the set. The only difference I did here was I took 3 points of crit eye from 3 1-slot slots on my armor and replaced those with 3 Divine Blessing jewels just for that extra bit of protection, because Divine Blessing will proc through your shield, so you'll take damage through your shield or just damage regularly. Divine Blessing will always have a chance to proc and reduce those damages. And so if you're tanking like I am, like you'll see, I'm getting hit a lot. I mean, I'm blocking like 99% of things, but that does come up fairly often. And so I really like that for the extreme version of Behemoth. Definitely not needed at all for the regular version though. And another thing that's really nice about using something like Divine Blessing or Divine Protection is that it's also going to give everybody in your group who's healing you, whether you have a dedicated healer or everybody's kind of doing healing, it's going to give them a little bit of a break because you're going to need less heals. So setting up the tank in such a way that it needs less attention from your other team members, so maybe they can heal other people who are in trouble, is always nice. I mean, of course, as a tank, you're going to need to get healed every once in a while, but if you can help mitigate that at all, it's going to make everybody's job a lot easier. And then the only other thing I'd mention as far as skills go is Health Boost 3. I see people not having this. If you have Health Boost 3 and you eat, that gives you 200 health. So they do stack. They didn't used to stack in the older games, but they do now. And I would encourage everyone to gem in Health Boost 3, eat for 50 health, so you have 200 health going into this. Don't be a liability to your team. But anyway, let's get started here. So first, I just want to give a shout out to Ewok, Semeki, and Symphonixa. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. We'll just call her Simp for short. But all 3 of them were excellent hunters, and I was happy to have my first victory with them. But anyway, so first thing, I like to come out right away with my Rocksteady Mantle on, and then I will immediately start using these crystal bursts to pull him over. He's usually going to target someone right away with a comet, and we usually take that over to the right side of the screen and then pull him over to the left for that boulder. That's generally the plan here. It doesn't always work out that way, but you know, kind of depending on how he moves, but you can kind of direct him with those crystal bursts, and that's really something to keep in mind. The crystal bursts are very nice. He will get flash immunity after 1 or 2 flashes, so you want to save those at least for area 2, if not area 4, for the 4th phase. And we'll talk about more about pods and stuff to pick up later, but as you can see, we're sleep bombing him here. And notice the damage from the falling rock, which is actually the thing that wakes him up. Usually you're only going to do like 2,000, maybe 2,500 damage. Boom, right there, 5,000. That's the optimal way to do it. If you can't get it, it's fine if you don't wake him up, but at least make sure in this first phase to drop both boulders on him. It's a huge boost to the team's overall DPS. The DPS is cumulative, so you need to be doing enough damage to him by the time you get to phase 3. And then here you can actually see Symph has his aggro. And this is one of the reasons that I like having 2 tanks. Having like a lance and a gun lance, or a lance and a heavy bow gun are my preferred options. I don't like lance and lance because of potential DPS issues. Lance is an excellent overall weapon and an excellent defensive weapon, but you don't need 2 lances. But with 2 tanks in general, you can really help ensure that someone is always maintaining aggro, and that is extremely important. That is the #1 important thing in the Extreme Behemoth fight, and it's also the #1 reason why I see groups fail. Lack of the ability to maintain aggro with Behemoth. Because when he's aggroed, he's not casting spells, no wind, no thunder, 1 meteor at a time to the tank, and maybe just doing some spin moves and stuff, but it's much easier to deal with him. And it basically from phase 2 on needs to be established regularly. I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but it's the number 1 reason people are failing this. The number 2 reason people fail, I would say, is the DPS check. Their DPS for their group is too low. They are just simply not doing enough damage by the time they get to phase 3. And this is mostly, you're gonna see, if you actually record yourself and watch other players, you see people who are like quote unquote healing, and they're just running around in circles chugging potions the whole time, but never actually fighting. Like, one thing to keep in mind is that everybody is DPS. There is no non-DPS role. Your DPS plus tank, your DPS plus healer, your DPS plus support, whatever you are. But everyone needs to be attacking the monster because the damage has to get done. And to shift gears here real quick, I was just shooting dragon pods at him, and then you see that he hits me with his aggro. If you see dragon pods, this is another thing I cannot stress enough. Get them to your tank, whoever you want, because you shoot those dragon pods at him, it's going to immediately establish aggro, and he'll always drop some in phase 2. You just got to do a little bit of damage to him, and then have someone go over. And if you can get those and shoot him at him, it makes phase 2 so much easier, because you can start the fight your way. Get everybody in, establish the aggro, get your flow going with your group, and makes this phase much more manageable. And this section right here is actually a good example of what I was previously talking about. Like, I'm tanking, but I'm still attacking him when I have the chance to safely do so. Clearly, with Temporal Mantle, your safe window is pretty much 24/7. You're open for business. And speaking of Temporal Mantle, it might be a good idea for some people to strategically use the Temporal Mantle. Don't pop it right away, especially in phase 1 if you don't need it. Use that very tactically when things get fucking hairy, when there's 10 million tornadoes on the screen. That's the time. Pop your mantle, go in there, slam his head a bunch, so you can get aggro and pull him out of those tornadoes, and he'll stop casting them. So you can definitely use your mantles very tactically, with the overall point being just to be thinking about item use, thinking about when's the best, most opportune time to, pop an item, whatever it may be. And this is actually a pretty good moment just to talk about all the stuff that still applies from the regular behemoth fight that should be very obvious if you're even attempting this. Like positioning your comets, spacing them apart from each other, pulling behemoth away from them. Like, if you don't have that stuff down in the regular fight, I don't think you should even be attempting this fight. So a lot of that basic stuff, I'm just foregoing it. I've done a video on the normal behemoth fight, and there's a million other videos on that fight. So if you're looking for the super basic stuff, go do one of those. You need to be familiar with that fight, I think, before even attempting this one. And now here in this section, I kind of want to focus on something different. Things kind of slow down here a little bit. I mean, it doesn't get too bad, but we enter a little bit of like rough waters, so to speak. It's a little bit tough for Symph and I to reestablish aggro here. Obviously, you can see I'm like getting hit multiple times. So when that kind of stuff happens, just stay calm, get out of the wind, and slowly just regroup. Like you see now, we're all down here, we're all regrouped, and we're gonna start trying to take control of that fight over again, right? So if you find yourself in those bad situations, just take a moment, realize the situation you're in, and get out of there. And if you can, signal, or if you're on a mic, holler at everyone and get everybody out of a bad place. But as you can see here, we're starting to completely regain control. Symph and I engaging the head. You can see arrows being shot at him, and then he pops aggro on me, which is exactly what we wanted. And now we've got another little moment of kind of rest, right, so to speak. And then you can notice the comet right there. That's about as close as I ever like to let him get. I do tend to try to keep him closer to the comets in extreme than I would in regular, because the cast time seems faster. I mean, I haven't actually gone and timed it myself, but the cast time for Ecliptic Meteor definitely seems a bit shorter in the extreme version, so hence why you kind of have to risk it sometimes and stay a little bit closer to your meteors. And every time I watch this, I actually love that little moment there where Symph and I both chug potions there for just a moment before we kind of guard back up. But anyway, and speak of the devil, here's Ecliptic Meteor, and we've got our comet all nice and handy dandy, close by, just hanging out. It ain't no big thing. All right, so now we're going into the feared and dreaded Phase 3. Of course, this is a phase with the DPS check. You have to do enough damage to Behemoth, and so I know a lot of people mount him, and I still agree with that. I mean, mounts in the regular Behemoth work really, really well. They still work good here, but really only one. It takes forever to build up a second one, and I just don't think it's worth it. Actually, I've timed out on this before because people have held the mount too long, and then we didn't have enough chance to kill him in phase 4 before the timer ran out. So yeah, you want to hold the mount for a bit and do one for sure, because it's still an excellent damage opportunity, but you definitely don't need to be holding it for like 5 minutes. And another thing I want to point out again here is the whole tail thing. So you already saw that spin move just now. He does that a lot here in this phase, and for people with a shield or for ranged users, it is not a big deal at all. But for other people, dual blades, longsword, all the other weapons, it can be a problem for them. So it's really nice if the tail's off by now, or if you can get it off early in phase 3. And I don't even remember exactly when we popped the tail, but it's always something. It just makes melee life users' life a little easier. So it's something to consider. So as a lance user / tank, I love it when he grabs me, because any competent team is going to immediately heal you, so you have nothing to worry about. If people aren't healing you like that, that's a sign that the team you're with is not competent. But you're going to get healed, and you're going to immediately have aggro, and so you're not going to have to worry about anything. That's going to give everybody else a chance to just wail on him, and all it cost you was getting grabbed and thrown down a little bit, which you got healed from immediately. So always nice. Extra bonus points if you get grabbed while you have the Rocksteady mantle on, so the follow-up roar doesn't affect you. It's always really nice when it happens that way too. And generally in this phase, I obviously try to keep him away from the lava, so I like to tank him right up against this wall. Some of his moves may push you around, so I like to kind of use the wall to help myself keep my position, because nothing's going to happen to me. I just need to move around a little bit to regain stamina, and especially when people are super fucking awesome and put a health booster under you, that makes life even better. And that's a perfect example of Symph coming and putting that health boost under me is a perfect example of excellent teamwork, seeing the needs of your other team members and coming to their aid. And it's little things like that that make a hunt successful. And so you just got to find people that are willing to do that, to put in even a little bit of thought into the hunt and to give a shit about its outcome, right? That's all it takes. All right, let's shift gears and notice here how I fuck up and get tremored. That one fuck up leads to me getting hit and me having to flash to save my own life to break aggro. So that's how things cascade in Monster Hunter, and that's a really good sequence right there to show. I usually counter every single move or tremor or anything, but that tremor led me to get hit, almost killed me, bad situation. So always watch there. One bad thing can ruin an entire hunt. That could have easily been me carding, right? But I had the foresight and the practice to just stay calm, know what I needed to do. I didn't want to break aggro and put the rest of the team under more stress, but I also didn't want to cart. We need to save those. And then the flip side to this is that I also knew that Symph could handle the aggro on her, and that if I was out of the way, having a second tank means that even if I'm down, she's still going to be able to rush in and get aggro. So either one of us would always have it. And that just goes back to team composition, team formation. I fucked up, I got down, I wasn't able to tank. Symph immediately steps into that role, right? She was already kind of taking it on while I was kind of blundering about. So it's just one of those things that enough cannot be said about having a strong team. And even if not that, just strong communication. Pull your mics out, talk to each other, not a bad idea. And I think for this phase, we're starting to wind down here. He's going to go run into his little hole here in a second, so I'm just still trying to pop this tail off. And that's one thing in this very first attempt that we definitely could have improved on, was getting that tail off. I mean, I've beaten this 3 times since in the last day, and now we're to the point where we're getting the tail off consistently in phase 1 or 2. Like, it's, the process is getting more and more streamlined, right, as you continue to do it, just like the same thing that happened with the regular version. You're going to start to streamline, better strategies are going to be found out. Oh, and actually there's a great strategy. You can't do it really here, but in the crystally area, like the Nurg area, in the 3rd phase, those little like cones, the little hills or mountains, you place him right on top of those. It's so funny, like the tank can just sit under it and keep poking him, and all his attacks will miss you because he'll be like elevated, kind of the way that the engine works. He doesn't sit on it naturally, he kind of floats. And so you can really take advantage of that if you direct him to or if he goes towards the Nurg like final area. I still like that area better than this lava area. I'm not a big fan of the lava area at all. You just got to deal with the heat. You got to deal with the lava everywhere. It's just more bullshit, which sucks. So some people like it better here. I think it's, especially in this bottom part, it's a nightmare because that lava can throw you around, and that's spelt disaster for runs before. All right, so here we go with the final phase. Usually there's a Tribdis coming right away if you're a little slower, but I usually try to pull it right around to the side, and that's why I'm running that direction. Or flash it or crystal burst it, whatever you have on you. But for whatever reason this time I just didn't get it. And then now with my Temporal Mantle, the idea is just go hog wild on him and try to establish aggro as soon as possible, because if you don't establish aggro immediately in this phase, it's going to become a complete nightmare. There's going to be tornadoes everywhere. He goes a little bit faster when he gets enraged. You're going to also have to deal with the lava and various other things. It's not a bad idea to even potentially save some of your mantles from the first phase, or save your status. But I mean, of course, we're all good here. We've clearly got aggro established, so we're able to kind of immediately get into this phase, take control of it, and kind of set the pace ourselves, which is what we want, because we're gonna have to go through 3 Ecliptic Meteors in the final phase. So of course in this phase your comets are even more precious than they usually are, because you've made it to the final phase, it's almost over, you're in the home stretch, so you've got to treat those comets like delicate eggs in this final phase here. So right now, luckily for us, he started getting tired right here, which is great. And then he turns around, yeah, Ecliptic Meteor. So looks like I'm super far away, but I felt pretty confident that I could get there in time, and that's something that you're just going to have to pick up. And another thing you're going to have to pick up is that right after the Ecliptic Meteor, he will come directly at your group. So have your shield up, get ready to dive, or whatever it is you do with the weapon you play. But get ready, because that's going to happen after every single one. And then after the first Ecliptic Meteor, gearing up for the second one, it's really, you're just kind of in maintenance mode. If you've made it that far, hopefully the landscape looks decent. If you've been maintaining aggro like we have, you're not going to have a bunch of tornadoes everywhere. So you're going to have the space to maneuver and reestablish that aggro before too many more tornadoes get up. Maybe hopefully someone's mantle got back up, or someone has pods of some kind. Or, boom, like a little foreshadowing earlier, paralyze, a little status. This is why I like saving it for the later phases, because that allowed me to hit him enough that right after this, I'm going to have aggro. And boom, once again, look around. There's that tornado in the background, but I have aggro again, and we're going to drain him right to the next Ecliptic Meteor cast. And that's all thanks to saving that paralyze for when it's actually needed. And like I said in the beginning of the video, don't blow your paralysis in the first phase. I would say if you need it in phase 2 or 3, that's even better than wasting it in phase 1. Like if you're having to do that kind of stuff in phase 1, your team has other problems. Like status affliction is not your problem. You've got some other fundamental issues. But yeah, for this part here, plays out fairly smooth. I mean, you'll see that even with guard 5 and guard up, when he does that like he gains this new move where he does like this fist pound and then like this ultra hard like shoulder slam. Even with guard 5, it's still taking like chunks of my health out, which is crazy. And you can see right there, I tried to save my life again with a flash, but he was flash immune. And then I got super quick and lucky and blocked in time because that would have been a cart. But I ended up leaving myself kind of far away. But I don't know if I'm foreshadowing something again. Or am I? And then here we get a really nice shot of that spin and block, little mono-e-mono. Behemoth versus Zen, the showdown. But yeah, we're just pretty much waiting at this point for that next Ecliptic Meteor. And oh, like I said earlier, look, my life's going back up. My team was there for me. I got caught, I got slammed, and I got healed. So that's why it's like, if you're a tank, you should be praying that he catches you and slams you and gives you that bleeding affliction, because that's going to be the best thing for your team DPS-wise. And then since I don't have aggro, I'm just back here still trying to get that tail off. And then, oh my god, oh no, not Ecliptic Meteor, I'm not going to make it. What do I do? Oh, I do jump timing, and I get my jump timing. I'm actually pretty consistent, and everybody has their own method, their own version, whatever you want to call it. Some people look at like the animation flinch, some people look at the text on the right side of the screen. I do it by when the meteor like crests or like starts turtle heading. It's the turtle head method. So right when you see it kind of turtle head, there'll be like a little lightning zap that kind of goes out from it, and then it'll start coming down. Right when that lightning zap and you first start seeing it turtle head, that's when I do it. So you guys can go back and look at the footage if you care. I mean, there's like dozens and dozens of people showing their jump timing footage now. But if you don't have that, good idea to practice it. Always nice to get you out of a jam. But even though I'm very consistent with it, I would say probably 60-70%, maybe a little higher, I never attempt it unless I have to. It's one of those things that you want to have in your back pocket in a worst case scenario. But if you can run to the meteor, or a comet, excuse me, just do that. It's going to be better for your team, especially if you're trying to help someone out and get them, pop their cherry. You want to make sure you're able to do that for them and like not help, but then just cart. And then kind of checking back in on the hunt here, as you can see, we have complete control. The landscape isn't that bad. There's maybe I think another tornado somewhere, but we've got health booster, and we're clearly in control of the hunt. We've got aggro, so it's just one of those things, like once you start getting it and you have the team, everything's going to start falling into place. The only thing that's different here is that you've just got to be a little bit tighter and more focused than the regular version of Behemoth. But if you can do the regular version, you should be able to do this version with just a little bit of practice. Oh, and here's that move, that slam, boom, shoulder, that thing. Like, it takes a chunk of health out. It was blowing my mind, and sometimes if he spams it, that can really spell disaster, especially if your tank doesn't have a ton of guard skills. I mean, I haven't tested him with anything other than guard 5, so I don't know. But what I want, of course I want the knockback, that's number one. But I also wanted that stamina, like depletion decrease, so I could be able to block more. And that's one of the main reasons that I took it all the way to 5. And here we go with the final Ecliptic Meteor. And we've got a comet just waiting there for us, and that was it. I mean, textbook. I loved how this went. I also personally love that on my very first attempt, I got the jump timing. So that was a little cherry on the cake for me. Of course, I was beyond excited to finally have won. It took me about a full day, if I just look at the hours. I mean, it was over the course of 2 days. But pretty much a full day, like about 12 hours, as maybe that's a reflection of how terrible I am, but that's about how long it took me before I got my first one. I was trying with randoms for a little bit, which was a nightmare, complete 7th level of hell. So I went on to GameFAQs, and that's where I met a lot of these guys. A lot of cool players on GameFAQs, so definitely check out if you need help or anything. I mean, I've been going back into the rooms, and I've helped a couple people already. And it's mostly because it just feels so good to win this Extreme Behemoth event. I am extremely pun intended, excited for other challenging content like this in the future. If this is the bar at which it's set now, I can't wait to see where they go next. This was an awesome event, and it really kind of showed us a lot of people who are just forum warriors and talk, and who's actually, you know, competent at the game. So it was a kind of a sweet victory on many levels. But anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful day and happy hunting.